Welcome, everyone. We're here for another session with Build with Ben, where we get to build things live and we get to debug as things go. Things will probably go wrong, and we're going to learn along the way. But the whole point of this particular series is that you get to build with me as we go through different themes of kind of things that I'm either interested in or things that people ask about. And so over the past few weeks, we've been working with how to use local files with Nuxt 3, basically, because frankly, when it comes to using a lot of or storing data, databases are great. It's great for keeping things in sync. There's a lot of things that are advantageous about it. But for a lot of us working on side projects and working on things that probably doesn't need the huge scalability factor, having the ability to work with local files is a great way of owning all that data, not worrying about any privacy. And you don't have to worry about setting up some instance on some other server and then forgetting that, oh, that thing takes billing or the free plan then gets like decommissioned at some point. Anyhow, so we're going to continue on that journey because I know in the last session we talked about, I thought we were all done, and then I went back to look at the app. I was like, oh, not quite done yet. So we're going to dive back in, kind of talk about the problem we still have remaining as far as like getting a more or less MVP so that one, this prototype can exist for anyone to try out locally because, hey, local data using local files. And then they can see how it works, and then frankly, they can see how they can apply that into their own apps. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So here is the repo that we're working on called Local File API Prototype. To be honest, I'm probably going to eventually rename this repo to sort of the updated series name, which I'm calling basically like using local files with Nuxt 3, which I think hits better anyways, because at one point I thought I was going to do some sort of API thing with Nuxt 3. But anyhow, at the moment, we're just learning how to use local files with Nuxt 3, so that will probably change at some point. Now let's go ahead and see how exactly this is working right now. So if I go ahead and run it, okay, there we go. All right, let's, actually, you know what? I will keep this full screen just for the sake of illustration at this point. Let me bump up this zoom a little bit. Okay, so the key thing here is we want to be able to add a bunch of files to a list. Basically create data as we go. You can imagine this as a to-do app or something, but in light of the recent One Piece live action release, I figured we would just keep it One Piece theme, and that's kind of been the overall theme for this app. Eventually I do want to style it and that kind of stuff, but anyhow. Okay, so you can see here basically we have the ability to allow the user to set a directory. So if I'm in the desktop, I can be like, hey, I'm going to be like new crew. This is going to be my folder, and then I'm going to select it. And then after that, you see that it's asking me to grant permissions, and so I'm going to grant it. Nothing's happening right now, but then if I go ahead and add like Luffy, and it'd be, oh, can I edit the files? Yes. Ooh, that would be something that would be nice actually, is to have the edit and write permissions saved once, so that you don't have the view permissions for one and then the write permissions for another. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to come inside of my Obsidian here, and then here I'm created this here. And then what we want to be able to do is user can set all permissions for local files in one configuration, right? Because right now we have the two different ones. Okay, so that can be for another time, or we'll see how far we can get. But once we add this, we have Luffy, we have Zoro, we have Nami, we have Sanji, we have Usopp, for example. Boom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. While this looks like any normal sort of app where you're just adding things into an input, it's populating a list. If we go inside of our desktop folder here, inside our new crew, you'll see that we actually have all the different crew members as their own file names, which is great. And then if we go inside into each specific page, you'll see here that it's able to actually read what's inside of the file. So here we have Luffy, for example. And then if we go ahead and open this inside of here, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to add that folder as well, just so that it's easier for us to see. So let me, inside of VS Code, we're going to add a folder to the workspace, desktop, new crew. So inside of new crew, you can see here, great, we see Luffy here. And what's great now is that if we go like, inside of here, we can actually just modify directly to be like, oh, so special moves. We can be like Gomu Gomu Pistol, for example. Save it. And if I refresh this page here, oh, this is surprising. That's not what I was expecting. We're going to go back for a second. We're going to refresh. Did it get a different directory? I'm going to read this directory. Yep. Unless now that I think about this, unless it's saying, oh no, this was fine. It's almost like something's weird with the permission caching is what I'm thinking firsthand. But nonetheless, you should be able to make modifications here and then it would just work. So if I make this an array, for example, and just, whoop, that's not what I wanted. If I just save like this, there's nothing stopping me. Something's weird though. Something weird's going on. Okay, let's see the console in that it's not allowed by the user agent. So it's interesting, something is happening with the permissions right now. So we'll log that in as a bug. User can save permissions between sessions. I thought we had solved this. But anyways, this is why we're still working on this, because I've realized while we covered some really basic scenarios in terms of like reading, creating files, in terms of a full-blown app, the patterns aren't quite totally there yet. So I'd like to create the full context of that so people can just kind of follow the pattern and then they can just build whatever they want, save the data, it just works. It looks like what's happening, if I were to guess, is that our directory handle is not saving the permissions correctly. That said, we want to be very specific. With Build with Ben, one of the things part of this is a practice for myself as well, is remembering that when we're trying to solve a problem as a developer, we focus on the problem at hand because it's very easy to get distracted by all the different tech debts and things that we see along the way when solving a problem. So, as stated, whether you saw like the social media announcement or whatever, this particular session is built around the idea of being able to update said data. Because what's happening here is that when we look inside of our app, let's see, pages, index here, you'll see that once a directory is selected, we basically go ahead and we manually create those files, right? So this is a reading one, so where am I thinking? Maybe it's in the use files folder. Okay, here we go. So get directory handle, you can see that here. By then we set the directory handle to directory value, and then we get the picker. Now the thing I have here, I wonder, read files, yep, read write files. So let's go and see where are we writing all the files. It is happening here. Okay, got it. So every time we add a member, we're creating the file, which is great. We're writing directly to it, but now we want to be able to update said file. So following the kind of structure that we ended up kind of coming up with inspiration of at the beginning, what I want to do then is when we go to each of the members, we're going to be able to add special moves for them, basically. Let's keep it as simple as that. And so once again, if we go to Luffy here, you'll see that we see all the different moves, but we want to be able to modify this list. So I think the easiest way for us to do this then is to go inside of the member page and we can say, okay, so we have this here and we have the member info, it looks like. Okay, the member info is a ref that contains, because we read all the files and we parse it into there. Okay, easy enough. That makes sense to me. So then what we want to be able to do then is see that list and then update it accordingly. So let's handle it this way. So we'll call this h2 raw data so we can see it in the raw. And then otherwise, what we're going to do is we're going to say these are our special moves. So special moves here, great. And then we'll run through all of the special moves, which we'll say is, I think we can do this, special, or let's say move in member info dot special moves, just like that. And the thing is, I think it's going to yell at us because it's saying it does not exist right now on this type, which is totally fine. That's a TypeScript error, which we're not going to deal with right now. And then we can basically just spit out the move directly. And then if we save here, looks like it's working. Gomu Gomu Pistol, that works. Great. Okay, so one thing we are going to do though is we are going to verify that member info.specialMoves exists, because if it doesn't, we just want to go ahead and hide it. Now the thing we want to be able to do here though is that we want to be able to have, once again, like a basic input type that basically we'll call it vModel. Or actually we don't even need to go that far, I realize. We should be able to delete the item from this piece. So theoretically what we want to be able to do is similar to before, we should have a button here that has a trash can that allows us to delete the special move from the list. and then it should automatically update the raw data correctly. So if we break this down programmatically, what's happening at the end? Have I tried Nuxt with bun? No, I actually have not yet. That is something that's on the list. I believe, I want to say it's already supported, but Alexander, thank you for the suggestion. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to add it as a note for an idea that look into Nuxt 3. Oh, looks like I did not do that as a pronoun. And bun. All right. So yeah, I think most likely because of all the kind of excitement around bun, we'll try to do a separate session on that where we build with it. Although, from what I understand, bun is mostly basically like your NPM yarn equivalent. So if anything, we would kind of see the experience of building an app while that kind of being the sideshow. So we'll see whether or not that becomes a full-blown session. But at the moment, still haven't tried have not tried Nuxt 3 with it. But when I do, I'll be sure to announce it and make sure it's taggable so that you can search for it. So back to this. So breaking down the problem we have to do one of two things. One, we have to make sure that we go ahead and basically filter out the member info. So in other words, what we want to do is when we click it, so let's see, we have a function that says delete special move. All right. Just like that. Okay. And so when delete special move happens, we basically want to pass in the move itself, and then we want to basically say, okay, then make sure to remove it from this list. So we basically need to make sure that when we click delete special move here, that we actually pass in the move that's going to be deleted. So I'll just add in the move here. That is the special move. And then we can basically, well, it's already kind of doing, we can see Copilot here helping us out a little bit. And basically, it's basically saying, hey, look, when we get through this, go ahead and filter it out and make sure that the move inside of here does not equal it. So in other words, if it's equivalent, filter it out. Speaking, did I watch a Netflix show? No, not. Sidetracking is all part of the session. So always happy to entertain side conversation. So yes, I have actually watched the live action. And I will say, while I was reserved on, in fact, for those who have watched any live action anime, typically it's really disappointing. But given what I've seen before with live action animes and having watched, and I'm caught up to like the One Piece manga anime basically, so I know everything that happens. I think they did actually a phenomenal job with the time and budget they had. Because I know one of the things that's really tempting with a lot of this storytelling is that you kind of want to see like a shot-for-shot remake of a story. And especially if you're familiar with the anime canon, it's easy to get caught up in the details of like, oh, but it didn't really happen that way. And like, but really this is how it happened. But we have to remember that the way I see it is that the One Piece live action is a way of bringing a new audience into this whole universe that for those of us who love One Piece have come to really love. And so knowing that and kind of taking the different styles they've had, like we could do a full-blown discussion on it. But I would say for anyone who's like hasn't watched the anime, and they're like interested in the live action, I actually would say it's actually worth checking out. So that's my TLDR on that. Okay, so I see Iku here in the chat. Why does V4 use the in keyword and JS use of to iterate over things in an array? Okay, hold up. Now I gotta look this up. For in JavaScript. So objects are consistent, but I do want to be clear for those watching the recording later. The question was around arrays for JavaScript. Yep, so we have the for of. I think the reason for this, if I'm not mistaken, is because arrays are technically objects. When you have the for of in JavaScript, you're basically iterating over the values directly. And you don't get access to the index, which is actually the key of the array. And so I think for that reason, it's been kind of standardized into the in, because here's what I can do. I can now break this down and actually access the index, which is actually super useful when you're kind of like, when you're improvising your own keys for the different elements. So now what I can do is I can say, oh, this is special move index, like that. And so that'll give me access to the order of things, which can be incredibly useful for other contexts as well. So I believe that's the reason we standardize on the in rather than of, because otherwise then people have to learn specific syntaxes. And so it's basically, if you want to loop through anything and render anything with Vue, since arrays are objects and objects are the primitives by which I think most things are being looped through, then I think for that reason, I believe that's the reason in is the standard. So that is a great question, though. So thanks for asking that. Okay, cool. All right, let's see. Let's bump that, bump that. Great. Okie dokie. So we have this stuff. We have the ability to delete said move. And so now if we come on over here, and if I delete it, we see, okay, great. The raw data has been updated. The special moves has been updated. This is great. So we go back now into our home page. And then we go over open Luffy again. You'll see, however, that didn't work. Why didn't that work? Well, the reason that didn't work is because we only updated on the client side, right? We have a ref that's being basically stored within the browser inside of memory, and we're only modifying that. We haven't actually modified the file itself directly. So thinking back on this, if we go inside of here, we have the ability to write a file. And so it create writable write close. But what I do want to check real quick before we simply jump onto this is I wonder if there's a way to, if there's an actual update file instead. So if we look at the file system access API and then we look at updating, the storing file, opening, yep. It looks like you're simply writing to the file. There's no real concept of an update per se, because all you're really doing is rewriting the entire file. It's not like a hot module reload thing where you're only updating pieces of it, which is totally fine. Which does mean then, as a result, if we're thinking about how this actually works, we basically get to reuse that primitive of writing to a file in that. So now, okay, so we have write file. Oh, here's the thing. We need the file handle and the contents, which totally makes sense. And so knowing that, the question is, how do we get the file handle to begin with? So if we read the file, let's see, if we read the file, well, that's a little too small to read. So let's try this again inside of here. If we're reading the file here, we'll see that we have the directory handle, and then we can get the file. Okay, so we have an ability to get the file handled via stored handle. Oh, I see. Okay, so we get the directory handle, then we read the entire file. Okay, so we're going to expand on this. Async function get file handle. And this is where we'll have the file name for now. And then if we have the file name, then there's nothing stopping us from doing, we get said directory, right? Because it's been stored locally. And then from here, the file handle is basically this. And we don't need to, we can actually populate the JSON ourselves for now, which is totally fine because we're trying to be a little bit more generic with this piece. So then I think if I think we did this correctly, then we should be able to actually just run this as, okay, so I should be able to delete this. And then rather than stored handled here, we actually will await this new method we call getFileHandle, where we simply pass in the member name and the JSON file. And then that should do the trick almost if we return the file handle here. Okay, that looks good. Let's make that a string real quick just so it doesn't yell at us anymore. Get file. Okay, this looks a little cleaner. Okay, so to make sure this still works, we're gonna go ahead and go back to the home page. This is great. Open Luffy. Okay, everything is still good. That's great. So in the pursuit of smaller commits and making sure we know exactly how things are working, let's go ahead and take a look real quick at what we did. We did a quick refactoring, which, okay, let's actually commit that part. Refactor, create separate get file handle function. Although as I'm saying this, let me undo that real quick because this needs to be exported here. Now we can actually say we refactored it. There we go. Now we good. Okay. Iku here. Very interesting. It's great to understand where things come from. Oh, yeah, of course. And if you ever have any other questions like that, feel free to just hit me up again with the chat, or if I'm offline, leave a comment in the video, whatnot. I'm always happy to answer questions like that. So please keep the questions coming. All right, so we have the ability now. We've deleted the move. We've updated member info. Now we need to actually update the file. I believe if I think I understand how things work, now that we've updated it, what we're actually going to do here is we're going to then await. Okay, this is where I need to do the write file, but we need to get it first. We need to get this from use file system API. And we're going to pull the write file here. And we actually need to pull the get file handle like this. Although it does dawn on me that, okay, hold up. I'm over optimizing. Okay, here we go. We keep it simple. We keep it simple. Yes, yes, yes. I know things are broken. So we write the file, then can we do it like this? Can we do it in a wait? Like that? Okay, let's kind of keep running with it. Member name value, yep, get file handle. Then we stringify that value. Oh, Jason's not stringify info that value. That looks clean to me. That looks like what I want to do. Okay, so we're here, we got it, and then we can delete. Okay, here's moment of truth. Did this actually work? I'm looking here, and I don't think that actually worked. Yeah, that did not work. Why did that not work? I was kind of hoping that it was such a clean line here, because you just delete the move, you await write file, you get the file handle, which is here, and then you just stringify the thing, and it should work. But, oh, here we go. Could not be found at the time of the operation. This is making me wonder, actually, as we're talking about this, what the directory handle is. No, it's new crew. So it could not find new crew in here? That's weird to me. Okay, so it's clearly, okay. So again, how do we troubleshoot this? My first thought immediately is to verify we can even get the file handle. So we're gonna skip all this right now. We're not even gonna worry about that. And what we're gonna say is const file handle equals get file handle, and we're gonna await this. And then we're gonna say, oh, I think I know what I did wrong. Because we talked about get file handle needs an extension. So that's actually probably the issue. So to verify my theory is correct, we will come in here and then we will log the file handle, just like that. There it is, the file handle, and yeah, so I believe I was right. Because all we did here, whoops, was we only unpacked the member name of the value, but remember, we actually need to include the extension. And for those immediately jumping ahead of like, oh, there's so many ways we could optimize to this, yada, yada. One thing at a time, we gotta make it work first, okay? And I say this more for myself and less for you. Okay, so good, that looks much better this time. So now that we have that, we can delete. There we go. Can we edit the files? Yes. Now that we edit the files, boom, magic. And then one more time though, because we wanna show that's simply just deleting the moves, we realize now that we want the ability to manage crew stuff specific. Because the file system API at the moment, I think I kept it mostly generic. Yeah, there's nothing specific about every one of these pieces. Oh, except this one. This one is not good. So I just realized. Okay, that's fine. Once again, I'm getting caught up in the details. Okay, what we can do right now is we can commit the fact that at this point, users can, so as feature, user can delete data from individual files. That's the main accomplishment. Now, again, just to show, when we think about APIs and just like how we design things, the more you get use out of a functionality, like the more repeated it is, it leads to then what I always like to call data-driven refactoring, because I think as developers, one of the reasons we enjoy doing this profession is because we enjoy kind of figuring out how the different puzzle pieces work. And there's kind of a high of figuring out like, oh, like this thing can do this, and then it can do this, and then it can also do this. But what that also leads to is that oftentimes we get into the point of pre-optimization. We try to make things bigger than they really need to be because we don't quite understand how they're going to be used. We get caught up in potential and how things might actually end up. So to kind of show more of that, right, which I've been trying to put into practice, none of this is an act, I promise you. The impulses I have to immediately refactor something to something better is very much in me as well. So I say this as a cautionary tale for those out there as well. So we can delete special moves. We obviously want to add special moves. So let's actually show that part. So we'll say vModel on this. And this will be new special move. That's really all it needs to be, nothing too crazy. So then obviously we don't have new special move doesn't exist yet. So mn new special move is a ref, it's just a string. Nothing more complicated than that. But more importantly, we need the ability to add special move, which will then, we don't actually need to pass anything in because we'll have that reference right here. And basically, we can basically say member info dot value dot special moves dot push. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And then Copilot correctly assumed that we would write the file with that. That looks good too. And then we can reset it. The only thing that we're going to do a little differently though is we're going to do a quick check though. If member info.value.special moves even exists. Because, yes, I believe there's a better way to do this. And so someone will probably tell me, but we want to make sure that it exists and it's because arrays, okay, actually I'll just do this real quick. If empty array log true. So it does. So empty arrays are considered just like they're valid objects. So actually I just need to verify that they exist. I actually don't need to verify that the length is greater. So as long as it's that, then we run this thing. Oh wait, sorry, hold up. If it exists, do this. Otherwise, no, shoot, I'm thinking about it other way. If special moves does not exist, okay, here we go. So because here's the thing, not all our data structures are being standardized right now. This is technically a downside to the local file approach where everything's kind of raw data. Until we build something that can standardize it across really easily, it means that everything is basically its own custom object. So we need to basically check. And so if it doesn't exist and we don't have this special moves, we do need to initialize an array. And then we can do our thing accordingly. So finally, what we want to do to make sure this actually works then is we'll keep it as simple as a keyup.enter, then we'll say add special move. That's really all it is. So I think that looks good. So we can do gomu rocket, enter. Okay, raw data is good. That's good. Final check. Oh, wait. Oh no, we're good. We are so good. Excellent. Okay, so great. Now, why do we do all this, right? Again, from a UI programmatic perspective, nothing too complicated. We've add and delete, right? That's like the bread and butter of what we do, and especially when it comes to forms. The thing we notice here is that these two pieces are identical every single time. So this is where now it's time to think about whether or not there is probably a composable that makes sense, especially if we're thinking of the fact that over time we're trying to manage the different files and write to it. But now that I think about it, even now, it's hard to justify creating an entire composable for managing members. So you can imagine if it's like a use crewmember.ts, and then we export a thing called like write member or like update member is what you might think of. But at this point, we don't have the data to support that use case. And so really, in my experience, the safer thing to do here is to just do it directly inside of the file where it's being used. Because what this means is later on when we realize we need it, then there's a justification for that. And more importantly, developers can actually see the relationship growing, right? We have data-driven refactoring. So if we have, let's see, write, I'm going to say, actually, update is slightly inaccurate because sometimes you're actually creating the file. So let's just say write member file. We'll keep it as simple as that. And then what we do want to get is the member name. That's correct. And then this is where we can now run this here, and it'll run this functionality. where we can now add member name like this. Write file. Yep. So we write the file. This is good. And then then inside of here we can await write member file name. Great. And similarly here, just like that. Okay. So to prove this works, we're going to add another. We'll say gomu battle axe, enter. Great. That looks good. This has been updated. Now if we delete rocket, that is updated. Magic. Oh, Iku here with a cool syntax recommendation right here. Let's take a look at this. So it looks like there is a way, and I knew it. That's why I'm, again, very glad that you mentioned this. When we do our check to make sure the array exists, oh my God, I had it here. If, there you go. If this exists. So it looks like what Iku is saying here is that the double question mark equals. Okay, so let's do a quick learning point. So actually, you know what? Before we do this, let's commit what we've done so far. So this is a refactor. Create single function for writing member data. Okay. Let's take a look at this real quick. Double question mark in JavaScript. So it looks like, oh, that's right, the nullish coalescing operator. You know what? Now that you mentioned it, I think it actually did. Do I have it? Yep, nullish coalescing in JavaScript. I actually created this note a while ago, and I never actually ended up. The fact that I forgot it means that we need to update this note on how we learn about stuff. Okay. So this is related to JavaScript. Okay, so what's going on? It says that it's similar to the OR, but doesn't treat 0 and empty strings as falsy. Check null or undefined. But the nullish co operator can also be used with an equal sign, which is what Iku is saying here in the chat. So if you nullish co-operate, but then you equal, I'm assuming that's like a chaining operator that happens. So yep, A is called Nope. Okay, JavaScript question mark equal like this. It's funny, it is not really well documented anywhere. Okay, but we can check this. It's not hard to do so. Good old consoles. Here we go. Wow, that's a lot of errors inside of here. Okay, so what do we got here? We want to check if the special moves is an array, right? So if we say let special moves equals an array, for now let's do it like this. We'll say if special moves question mark equal array log, whoa, hello, log true, just like that. So it does say true. If special moves now is equal to a string, and we check that, oh, right. Although the fact that it logged undefined, I think, is our else condition, but it's fine. Console.log false. So we can do. There we get our false. Okay, so it's almost as if, so special moves equals an array, check again, true. What an interesting syntax, because we have essentially, it's on the MDN page right above the selected operator. Ooh, perfect, okay. So I think I read a little too quickly. So let's jump back in here. All right, you said that it's, nullish coalescing assignment. That's what this is. All right. What is going on here? So assignment only evaluates the right operand and assigns the left if it is nullish. Oh. Wait. If it is nullish. Okay. So if this equals that. So how would we best use this new syntax we're learning about? Y evaluated logs nothing. Examples, this is what we always use. Oh, I see what we're saying here. Okay, so we're saying if it's null, then assign this on the right-hand side. So what I'm hearing here then, so let's, I think we're gonna assign this actually equal in JavaScript. Make that something I can search later. Let's see, is nullish coalescing assignment. Although I can't seem to spell apparently coalescing. It's one L. Okay, cool. So actually let's make this an H2. Let's make this an H2. All right, so it looks like if the equivalent here, if we're taking a look at this example, so let's make this JavaScript and taking a look at here. Whoops. Cut here. JavaScript there. Great. So the equivalent of this is saying options.duration is equal to either options.duration or 100. Because if it doesn't exist, right, if it's null, it will automatically then jump to 100. That should be the equivalent here. Okay, cool. So if we reflect back on this code, this means that rather than do like a check to make sure that special moves exist, for example, based on our new syntax, what we can say is that if special moves basically is null, in other words, this coalescing operator, like is it null? If it is, then just make it an array. And this should work as we expect, and we can prove this actually pretty easily. Because, for example, whoop, all right, let me close that, bump that. Oh, I have too many windows open. Okay, hold localhost, there we go. That's much better. So if we go to Zoro now, Zoro does not have any new moves, and we can say like Phoenix/enter. And so correctly, it goes ahead and updates the data property so that it contains this move, made it an array, and then we can push correctly. Now, to prove that this wouldn't work without it, we can go back now and let's go to ketchup fireball for Usopp, hit enter, then we should hit a bug. What we can see here is that there's nothing to push on because it's undefined. So this is pretty cool as a way of basically saying, hey, look, make sure this property exists. If it doesn't, then make it an array. Of course, to Eku's point here, there is a question regarding legibility because obviously we just spent about the last 5-10 minutes learning about this new concept about nullish coalescing assignments, which as a syntax I actually do like quite a bit because it's like, hey, does it exist? If it doesn't, go ahead and assign it to that. On the other hand, like everyone kind of understands the if syntax, like if the thing exists, then do the thing. So again, for the sake of trying something new out, we're going to actually leave this in here. This syntax is called nullish coalescing, assignment. That's what it is. And so we'll leave that there in case anyone stumbles on this. So Eku, thank you so much for mentioning this neat little syntactic sugar. I gotta say, there is something nice about this one-line value, I must say, that I do think could be valuable to kind of keep in the back burner. Okay, so now that we have this saved and we refresh Usopp's page, now we should be able to say, hey, look, so ketchup, fireball, enter, everything works as expected. Cool. Okay, let's see. I think, let me make sure we commit all of our work. Okay, factor, use new nullish coalescing assignment syntax. So to Eku's point here in the chat, there's kind of basically voicing agreement that at this time, this here, while it's a very concise one-liner, versus its old like if member info.value.special moves basically exists, then member.info.value dot special moves equals this. So it's basically the comparison between the two. This one, everyone can basically read and get through. This is just a little bit more concise, but it does, the fact that it is a rarer syntax means less people will know about it. So something to think about in terms of your usage of it. But again, this session, Build with Ben, is about building, trying new things out. So we're gonna leave this in here just for people to pick up something new along the way as they're learning about JavaScript and building stuff with it. So this was a successful session because what was our goal for today? Our goal for today was learning how we can actually make sure we update the files accordingly as we're making modifications to the data. What we learned all along is that updating a file is technically just writing data to the file. There's no such thing as like keeping all the data structure the same extent and only modifying one piece. At the end of the day, although one piece pun, that was not intentional. So the thing about this though is as a result, this means that you kind of do need to always track the entirety of the file within your client side, call it like state, memory, however you want to call it. And so the tricky part with this, of course, when working with local state or local files is being sort of intentional about what you're going to break up into new files and what you keep in one. So for example, I have played with in the past is having one gigantic JSON file that you want to update. But this does mean that if you want to update a single piece of that JSON, you got to rewrite the whole thing. And that can obviously come with performance implications, especially as you're building larger and larger pieces of that database. And so I think where it does make sense, try to leverage the ability to create new files and that sort of stuff. That being said, as far as this series goes, it looks like we still have a couple more things to do in terms of wrapping up this app. Because one, in terms of problems we still need to do, we still need to figure out how we can set all those permissions at one time. And more importantly, we actually did see that when I refreshed the page, it lost the ability to edit again. And so I don't know why exactly that happened. What we still are missing though is the ability to actually properly manage the permissions. And it's probably not gonna take that long to figure out. I imagine there's probably some configuration we need to pass to the setting when we're actually like opening the folder for the first time to be like, hey, we want it to be read-write and we want to just save that. And then other than that, maybe the other bug we saw, although may not actually be a bug, is that when we refresh the page, it looked like it needs to re-get the permissions to write files to the directory. And I don't know if that's intentional because theoretically in my mind, if you've already saved the permissions to your IDB and the instance, there's really no reason why you should have to revalidate the ability to write. So my guess is those two are actually connected in my mind. But that being said, we're going to save that for next week. And of course, any other questions that anyone comes up with. So it looks like we are looking at a part 5 for this series to kind of get this whole concept working together so that y'all have it for your own reference going forward. So with that said, thanks everyone for hanging out today. It's been an absolute blast. Hope you had fun in hanging out with me today. And I guess I'll see you all next week. All right, take care. Bye-bye.